Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel, and in our top stories today from the AP, fragile ceasefire appears to hold between Israel and Iran. Trump vents frustration with both sides, as to be expected. So Dubai, United Arab Emirates, a fragile ceasefire between Iran and Israel appeared to hold Tuesday after initially faltering, and U.S. President Donald Trump expressed frustration with both sides, saying they have fought for so long and for so hard that they don't know what they are doing. Israel had earlier accused Iran of launching missiles into its airspace after the truth was supposed to take effect, and the Israeli finance minister vowed that Tehran will tremble. Now, of course, there's always going to be this tension and posturing just as the ceasefire happens. Now, 6 hours prior to Iran having to come to a ceasefire, Israel came to their ceasefire, which is why they were probably pointing out, why is it that rockets are still flying towards them or towards American bases in the Middle East? But there was a 6-hour buffer that was being established there. So that would explain it. But in short, because, you know, we take the we take the tumult, we take the confusion, and all of that, and we break it down. And here we see already House shelves effort to impeach Trump over Iran strikes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it took very little time, and I'm very grateful and I'm very thankful. We can all breathe a sigh of relief. It looks like everything had gone well. We heard all of the things about World War III and escalation and these sorts of things. So thankfully, it appears that that was more exaggeration, maybe sensationalizing by some, or unnecessary worry. But of course, we all have to take those things into consideration, whether it's sleeper cells or other things that may happen. We talked about this yesterday when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. We talked about a lot of different things, but nonetheless, it looks like the House has shelved efforts to impeach Trump. This is also from the AP. The U.S. House voted overwhelmingly Tuesday to set aside an effort to impeach President Donald Trump on a sole charge of abuse of power after he launched military strikes on Iran without first seeking authorization from Congress. Now, we already touched on this yesterday, the War Powers Act, and how presidents have not used it since World War II. So he could and did act very much like other presidents have done, and I gave several examples, cited different instances. You guys can check out that video from the main page here on the channel. But let's see some of the after effects of this as well, because I found this to be rather interesting and fascinating nonetheless.
We did make bipartisan calls. Thomas Massie and the Democrats, he should be a Democrat because he's more aligned with them than with the Republican Party. We're given notice. The White House made calls to congressional leadership. They were bipartisan calls. In fact, Hakeem Jeffries couldn't be reached. We tried him before the strike, and he didn't pick up the phone, but he was briefed after, as well as Chuck Schumer was briefed prior to the strike. So this notion that CNN ran with at the White House did not give a heads up to Democrats is just completely false. In fact, both Senator Schumer's office and CNN had to retract that story last night because it was a blatant lie, and we showed them the timestamps from those phone calls. But I want to add something to Thomas Massie's false points. The White House was not obligated to call anyone because the president was acting within his legal authority under Article 2 of the Constitution as Commander-in-Chief of the President of the United States. We gave these calls as a courtesy, and the Democrats are lying about this because they can't talk about the truth of the success of that operation and the success of our United States military and the success of this president and this administration in doing something that past administrations, Democrats too, have only dreamed about.
And I agree with her 100%. With the CNN retraction, we're going to talk about that here in just a second. I'm going to show you actual video of them, like live on air, having to retract about what was going on with the ceasefire. But this is not unusual, right? We know that the left likes to, or the Democrats and the media like to sensationalize and exaggerate, as I was just saying a moment ago. So they were contacted, as Caroline Leavitt was saying here. So they like to play this game of ignorance or foolishness. They prey on the ignorance of people to not know, like, constitutional law and these sorts of things. Like, we can't expect every American to understand all the fine details and nuances of our Constitution and our law, or even our government. And so they prey on this because, you know, it's not like individuals where, say, a content creator like myself can look all these things up and have the time to do all this, because most people are out, you know, taking care of their daily lives and so forth, and so they don't have the luxury of doing this because obviously they're not commentators or they're not involved in politics and so forth. And so the Democrats kind of prey on this ignorance. And I would argue, maybe this is a bit tongue-in-cheek, maybe cynical, maybe sarcastic on my part, but I would say the operation was so successful and so decisive and so effective was because They didn't get a hold of any Democrats. And I argue also that the exit of Afghanistan would have gone probably just as well if Donald Trump had been in office. So we have example after example after example of Trump's successes. And we also saw just yesterday the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump can continue to send people back or send people back to other third world countries if a particular one does not accept them. So Trump is continuing to win, and they are irritated and annoyed. And as we just saw here, the House completely shelved an impeachment entirely. So they were waiting. They are counting on this. As a matter of fact, I would say they cheer for Trump's failures. I mean, it's like they work in the opposite direction of everything that's going on. And it's unfortunate, but I'm grateful and glad that everything is working out, not only to the benefit of the president, but the benefit of the American people and even the world. Because the people in the Middle East couldn't be more happy that this has happened to Iran. Now, of course, now there's debate and so forth on whether or not there was enough damage or whether it was actually damaged or actually any impact whatsoever, because, the Iranians are going to deny it and other people that just don't like Trump are going to deny it. So we'll just keep moving on from there. But here is another retraction that had to be done by CNN. Here's Erin Burnett, had spent the first several minutes of her show adamantly denying that there is a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And the thing was that Iran was saying that there wasn't one at the time because, they always wait to the last minute. Just like Trump gave them 60 days to come to the table. But as we've mentioned here on the BuzWeaver channel, when it comes to politicians, most people around the world presume that what a politician says isn't necessarily 100%. But when it comes to Donald Trump, if he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. But this was absolutely just live, real-time reaction of CNN having to do a retraction, as it were, or coming to the realization that they were just simply wrong.
Against it. And certainly right now, Aaron, the Iran saying that their retaliation is going to continue and that their retaliation, if anything, is going to become more intense. Of course, one of the things that we heard is that the Iranians believe that they are in a conflict both with Israel and the United States, feeling that Israel has dragged the United States into a conflict directly with Iran, Aaron.
All right, Fred Pleitgen, thank you so much. Of course, the literal eyes and ears on the ground to hear those explosions. I want to go now to Barak Ravid, our political and global affairs analyst. Also joining us, of course, retired General Mark Kimmett, former Assistant Secretary of State. He oversaw policy here in the Middle East. And here with me in the UAE, along the Strait of Hormuz, Paula Juan-Cox, our correspondent, who knows this region better than anyone. Barak, I just want to start with you, though. I know you have some new reporting. What are you learning right now?
Hi, Aaron. What I'm learning is that this ceasefire has been mediated and, according to President Trump, also achieved through mediation of Qatar and the United States.
There you have it. So on the Chiron here, just before it came on there, says, Trump announced a ceasefire. Iran, no ceasefire proposal received. Oh, man, that was awesome. And then here, surprisingly, from the Biden admin,
look, bottom line, this is about the best place we can be. I give extremely high marks to this national security team and President Trump for managing this crisis and given where we are. But now let's follow through. There's a chance for diplomacy here. Look, bottom line, this is about the best place we can be. I give extremely high marks to this national security team and President Trump for managing.
Yeah, and as I said, I would argue that the reason that it went so well was because there was no Democrats involved. Right now, granted, as we've always talked about here on the BuzWeaver channel, the president isn't a boss of a company or an industry or a corporation, right, who can just say this, that, and the other and things get done. It's a little different in government, but the fact that Donald Trump is so, persuasive and he wants to get things done the way he wants to get things done, things seem to get done, and that's a good thing. Now, of course, that's not the way government works, of course, because the Democrats and so forth represent their constituents and others who obviously oppose Donald Trump, and we've seen how much goes on with them and their lawfare and how they actually try to stop Trump. Because if you ever think about it, what is it the Democrats are trying to solve, right? Who are they helping by constantly focusing, for example, on illegal immigrants and illegal aliens? How does that help their constituents? What does that do for their constituents that have other issues, the day-to-day things that they want their representatives to address? And they're off over here trying to just basically stop Donald Trump at every moment they get. They never like take a moment and say, hey, is what Donald Trump doing really going to help Americans? Is it going to help the world? Is it going to have a benefit? Is there going to be something substantive to this? Is there going to be something positive to it? They never ask that. The only thing they do is whatever Trump does, they do the opposite. But I found it fascinating nonetheless here because, of course, I have, speaking of Massey, I put Thomas Massey here and then Marjorie Taylor Greene and then AOC. Of course, they were very vocal during all of this, especially on X. If you guys haven't already, of course, below this video, you can find the various social media links that I belong to. But, yeah, they were kind of going back and forth on X. And then we had Trump supporters and MAGA and however you want to identify each of these individuals going back and forth on there over this issue, particularly the arguments and semantics over war. Of course, now there isn't a war, so no war in Iran, as one of these protesters was posting here. So there never was a war. There was not a war. Now, you could argue that Israel and Iran were at war because they were certainly going back and forth, and I would say Israel had the complete and total dominant position when it came to all that. But I do welcome your guys' thoughts and opinions down in the comments section. Are you at least relieved that this situation seems to have some sort of a conclusion? Now, of course, we'll have to see what Iran ends up doing because they are the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world. So we'll see how long this can happen. But I think the message from Donald Trump sends a message to everyone who is counter to the United States, our enemies and adversaries and others out there, that Trump is willing to do what he says he's going to do. Because countries like Russia, North Korea, China, and the Middle East only understand strength, or Russia too, as I want them in there. They only understand strength. What can you do to stop us? And it's kind of like the same mindset that the Democrats had during the Biden administration, right? Who's going to stop us? As we talked about here on the BuzWeaver channel. They were just doing what they were doing, and their attitude was, well, who's going to stop us? Well, now Donald Trump is there, and we see he did what he did there in the Middle East, and all the world was watching. The Chinese, the Russians, the Middle East, North Korea, they're all watching, and Trump says he's going to do it, and he did it, and I am grateful. But thank you guys so very much. All of you here on YouTube, that's right. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, below this video, you can find the various social media links that I belong to, including my affiliate links, so you guys can take advantage of those. It does help out the channel, but of course, your likes, your shares, and your comments help out tremendously, and I thank all of you guys here in 2025 for participating in all the different activities I've been doing on YouTube. So thanks to you guys for all of that help. And, of course, across New Tech. But appearing there on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, that'd be the channel icon. You guys can click on that to subscribe, as well as to select notifications. That way you know when there's content here on the channel. And I'll see all you guys in the next video.